President Trump reminding us that we're not in a trade war. China already won that. He's talking about tariffs and rightening the ship. But a lot of folks are worried, how might this impact midterm elections? Could it upend the gubernatorial races in the Midwest? Could it change the House? Because we know that China already trying to play a role here politically with the potential counter tariffs. Here with me now to discuss, Fox News political contributor Tammy Bruce, Independent Women's Voice president, and Fort O'Connell Civic Forum PAC chairman and political analyst. Everyone's talking Smoot-Hawley, Tammy. There was a significant shift in a political fortunes then from the party that enacted it. I should say Smoot-Hawley went up to 20,000 items. This, I think, is distinctively different. But China understanding history, also understanding the soft underbelly of America right now, and the media's hatred for Donald Trump, knew exactly where to strike today.
Yeah, at the same time, they're also unsure, I think, as a lot of people are, because they've never really seen an American president like this, certainly not in the last couple generations, right? So a lot of this is knowing Donald Trump. I'm sure they've done their research. The American media hasn't necessarily. Knowing that these are steps and negotiating tools as well. They know that, in fact, this is a bit of a dance. And they're testing the president. They will lose, of course, because they understand that, as he has said before, this is not America alone. It's America first. I mean, there are going to be partnerships. And as you've noted, this is not about a trade war. This is about tariffs to get back from a trade war that we actually have already lost. There's a $500 billion gap. That is huge. The argument here is that like in a battered woman situation, that you've got to let us continue to hurt you or we will hurt you more. Donald Trump is saying enough with that already. This will, in the end, because of his ability to negotiate, work out well. But, of course, there are other nefarious dynamics here where people want the president to fail and they want this to hurt him.
You know, Ford, we talk so much about the virtues or the benefits of getting a businessman in the Oval Office. Well, guess what, folks? This is what a businessman does. To Tammy's point, Donald Trump is used to sitting across the table from very powerful people, and the first person that blinks usually loses. It's a high-stakes game. We perhaps have never been on this roller coaster, but we're on it now.
Well, I think Tammy's absolutely right. Look, Charles, there is always the next election, and President Trump has decided that he's going to follow through on a campaign promise and stand up for the American worker and U.S. business. And I think you're spot on when you say that China is being very strategic here. Of course, because they prefer the status quo, and they've been doing this for years. I think the difference is, and Tammy pointed this out, and that is we have a president who has the backbone and the courage to fight back, and I'm not sure China's aware of that. How this will specifically play out in the next election, we don't know yet, because I think that there are some states in the Midwest that could be vulnerable here, but we are in the early stages of a month-long process that we just really don't know how it's going to turn out. But the one thing we do know is that President Trump's going to fight.
All right, so soybeans grown the top 10 states. President Trump won 8 of them.
Yep.
Again, you know, it's precision.
Whiskey and Kentucky.
Right. So it's precise stuff. And again, though, it doesn't really come to fruition. In worst case scenario, it wouldn't come to fruition until after perhaps the midterm elections. But prices automatically adjust a little bit, and the howling will get louder and louder as we approach these deadlines. How much pressure is that going to put on President Trump?
I think he expects this. He knows that this is a multi-layered game, that we're at a very early stage. These are actually, of course, just talks right now. These are ideas that are being moved forward when it comes to whether or not something actually gets implemented. But in the long run, the people that voted for Donald Trump wanted a man of action. They wanted a disruptor. They understand that that means things will get a little bumpy, but we've got the right man at the helm. And this is where, when you're getting out of a bed, when you've been in a coma, it's going to be a little unsteady, but at least you're on your feet.
You know, Ford, the Washington Post had an article about how this kind of action hurts those voters who voted for President Trump. But I think the media continues to say this kind of stuff, thinking that somehow these voters are dumb and don't understand the initial ramifications and don't understand that they're willing to perhaps take them for better long-term circumstances.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Charles, and I don't think the media understands what's going on here. This is about leveling the playing field, lowering barriers, and preventing China from stealing technology. I don't see how they can understand that China's been taking advantage of us and the American worker for years, and the idea that President Trump actually wants to do the right thing. I think what the media ultimately misses is we can take on China now, or we can take on China later with a stronger military and economically. Which one do you think makes more sense?
Yeah, this also reminds me of when Obama was complaining about Donald Trump saying he was going to bring the carrier jobs back and had no idea how that was going to work, that it was going to be a magic wand. But this is the man who makes things work, and he breaks ground, and this is one of those cases.
And we saw another strong round of manufacturing jobs today, too. I'll talk about that later. Thank you both very much. Well,
Thank you, Charles.
A potential slash in the newly passed omnibus bill could be underway right now. Again, just weeks after being signed into law, President Trump may go for a do